we're going to just go right into our guest, right?
I'm looking forward to this show.
All right. Dr. S. Simmons comes to us thanks to our wonderful intern standing right over there being silent through most of our shows, Morgan Lonergan, who is a student at UIC, University of Illinois Chicago, and an intern on this show for many months, a real essential part of our show. I was very impressed with her her professor and the subject matter that Dr. S. Simmons is bringing to the awareness of her students. Dr. Simmons, it's a pleasure to have you. Thank you, and welcome to Live from the Heartland.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And first of all, I don't use she, her, or hers for pronouns.
I know, I've been warned to be careful.
Yeah, you can use S or you can use they, them, theirs to refer to me. So, you know.
They, them, theirs.
Yeah, they, them, theirs.
You know what? We could start right off with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to tell a story.
Tell us a story.
In 2014, I had the honor of participating in the 50th anniversary of the free speech movement out of Berkeley, where I had taken my first arrest way back. And I was in Oakland.
Taken your first arrest?
Well,
interesting.
The FSM in '64 was my first bust.
Right.
Of more than one. A little later that day, or on a Saturday, I was at a book fair over in Oakland, and when we were leaving, there was appeared to be a guy with a big red beard and wearing a kilt, long red hair, and I accidentally bumped into him. And I turned and I said, "Sorry, bro." And he went bananas on me. He says, "I'm not a bro."
I'm not your bro.
And, well, he didn't say it that way. And he eventually threw his beer bottle on the ground and broke the glass. And I said, "Hey, I apologize, but cool it out." So then two kind of guys on the street who were, hustling money and drinking, they were the ones that hit me. He said, I think he likes to be called they or them. So that was and I didn't understand that. I was totally confused. So that was my introduction. So I'm kind of an old macho dude who tries to be politically in tune. And maybe you could give me some direction about terminology and what's going on.
Absolutely. So I actually brought you all some handouts. So I'm going to give you that to start.
Yay, teach!
And it's something that we give at UIC. So I coordinate, facilitate, evaluate what we call our Safe Zone program, and that's something where we go into classrooms, we go into departments, organizations, and talk about how to be more inclusive around this gender and sexuality stuff, right? And so this is a handout from one of the booklets that from the booklet that we use, and it's called Pronouns Matter, right? So what is a pronoun? So if I ask you that, what is a pronoun?
It's a word that refers without name to a person.
Yeah, and what are the ones that we typically use?
He.
She. It.
Dude.
Her, his, theirs, them.
Yeah. So you all are hitting on many of them. If you turn over that sheet that I gave you, that's sort of a list of some of the other pronouns that folks are using, right? So when you use a pronoun, that's to refer to someone if you're not going to use their name. And generally, we know he, she, they, and it as pronouns, but there are so many more that folks are using. And the reason for giving that sheet is not to say now you need to memorize all these other pronouns, right?
Wow, there's a lot.
There are a lot.
You guys would be surprised. I'm looking at this. It's hard on radio.
Yeah, we can do it.
It's a visual aid.
You can actually see this on video in another few days
that's
on
true.
youtube.com/Heartland Media.
That's right.
Yeah, so again, it's not to say like memorize this long list. It's to say that there are other options, that folks are moving beyond the binary of he and she and even moving beyond they to say, this is how I want you to refer to me, right? And really taking some ownership and saying, and some agency in how people interact with you. And that's what it's all about. It's not to police your language or to say you should or shouldn't say these things. It's just to say that we're all individuals and you never know how someone identifies, how someone wants to be referred to. Like, we would never walk up to someone who we don't know and just say, "What's up, John?" or "What's up, Ann?" Like, we wouldn't just throw a name onto someone, right? We would ask them, "What's your name? What do you want me to call you?" Similarly,
That's a good point.
we're saying with pronouns, you don't know, and so you need to ask.
So make no assumptions.
Make no assumptions. Or use they, right? They is a general
fallback for when you're not sure.
Exactly. And we know how to use it in a singular, right? We might think, oh, they is like more than one person. But if someone's car was being towed outside and we didn't know who owned it, we would
It's
be like,
theirs.
their car is being towed, right?
Right.
So we know how to use it in a singular. So we just need to practice that a little more.
So back to my experience,
Yeah.
like if someone appears to be of one gender or another, what's the appropriate response if I make a mistake? Like this guy got really mad. This they got really upset. What would be a way that you would come back at me and to hit me to the new way of referring to gender or
and not
choice?
not everyone is going to it's not everyone's responsibility to educate other people either, right? So
Good
just
point.
because I identify as trans or I appear to be trans and we have an encounter where you make a mistake, I don't have to educate you. I guess I just want to say that's
good.
off
That's
the
good.
bat. But
It's up to me to learn it.
Exactly.
But I have to learn it through experience.
Exactly, and you have to be non-defensive, right? And so I think what
Tall
I heard,
order.
That's all order for a guy like me.
what I heard you say was like, oh, like I didn't mean that, and that was sort of getting at your intention, right? You didn't intend to offend that person, but the impact still may have been negative and still may have been offensive, and so that's what we want to attend to is the impact, not the intent. So. You might say, I'm sorry, that wasn't my intention, but I recognize that offended you or that hurt you. Please let me know how you would like to be referred to.
fellow person.
I'm sorry that I did that, right? And really tending to the impact that had and not, your intention behind it.
Well, I mean, in the early days of the student movement that Michael was a part of, free speech movement, we had to do a lot of language changing for a lot of different things, not just racially, but that was definitely the first one. Finding out what people of color wanted to be called as opposed to, and I think it's about acknowledging people's individual solidarity. Does that sound?
Well, say more about that.
Well. No, because you're the guest.
What did you mean?
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. What do you mean about individual solidarity and what that looks like?
I think it's about what you were getting at when you just told Michael, this is something you could have done or you might have done, which was answering his question, what should I do? And I think when it's someone who I know like Michael, he absolutely, I'm sure, respects the solidarity of that individual.
Yeah.
And so the fact that we need to learn now how to be less gender or open up our gender bookcase or framework, I think that a lot of folks are willing to do that. Those of us who are not in school anymore, we don't run into it. All the young people that I do organizing with are hip to this stuff, and they're very patient with me. Oh gosh, but so
we weren't with the older folks in our lives.
I feel like we weren't as patient.
No,
as
we certainly
should have been.
Well, some folks aren't. I think that generation gap that you're talking about is very present, and for some young people, they just don't understand why older generations can't get it or won't get it. And I'm always saying, like, we do have to be patient because this is a very different way of thinking. This isn't how you all were socialized, right? This isn't sort of the understanding that was maybe prominent when you all were coming up. And so it does take some time. And you can't just rely on it's going to take me some time, right? You also have to be intentional and work to make changes in your language, make changes in your understanding. You can't just say, well, it's going to take time and let's wait on that.
That's a really good thing, and I need to remind myself that I think that was what I saw in some faces that when I said, well, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do all this pronoun changing, and they were like, silent, but
you better.
They were like, you better.
Well, because imagine what is that message that you're sending when you say this pronoun?
Is hard.
This is hard. It's saying you're too hard. I don't understand you. I don't want.
Bingo.
It's gonna take me time to really get you and figure you out, right? Like it can be really personal, right?
Yeah, you're so right to give us that response.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me ask you, Dr. Simmons, S. Simmons, where'd you grow up, and how'd you get into what you're into?
Yeah, good question. So I'm from Chicago Heights, Illinois, so I'm not very far.
Mount Greenwood.
Very cool.
Do you believe it? Not terribly. Not if you're an anti-racist, it's not too cool. But anyway.
Yeah. So grew up there, born and raised. Spent the majority of my childhood there, and also a couple of years in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. You probably heard of this place, very large Amish community.
Yeah, Amish.
And so
that's a story. Can you give us a little more info on
Wait,
it?
let her finish my question first.
Them. Let them finish.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
And so just what I did right there, that's something that you can also do so that it's not always on the person who's maybe being misgendered or misidentified. As folks who want to be advocates, allies, accomplices, you can also intervene and say, actually, I think S uses they, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so
Big one.
born and raised Chicago Heights, Illinois. Went to school at Iowa State, believe it or not. So got my bachelor's and master's degrees in psychology. And through that work, I started getting involved in research projects around gay youth in Iowa. I worked in the LGBT office at Iowa State. And at my first year of college is when I was starting to explore my own queer identity. And so I was like trying to figure it out on my own. And through working in offices and on research projects, I was able to sort of understand myself a little bit more and felt like that was really empowering for me. So I wanted to provide that for other folks. Mm-hmm. So started to talk about gender and sexuality, started to really disclose how I identify, what that means to me, talk with my family in some ways about it. And now what I do is I work at UIC in the Gender and Sexuality Center, so I'm an assistant director there, and I talked about the work that I do. I also teach Gender and Women's Studies at UIC, Gender and Women's Studies 101, so talking about gender in everyday life. So it's like really breaking it down from all this theoretical, heady kind of stuff to like, what does this look like on the ground? And then I also teach another course at UChicago around trans advocacy. So the Social Service Administration program there. So working with future social workers and folks who want to work in social policy around what it means to be an advocate for trans people with trans people from their positions as social workers.
Can we go back to Lancaster, Pennsylvania?
Yeah, let's go back to it.
Because how did you end up there and what was going on there?
Yeah, so that was in my very young childhood. So I think I was 6 or 7 when we moved there. My dad's job.
Oh, you moved there.
Moved us there, and I was one of 2 people of color in my entire school. And it was a fascinating experience. I experienced some overt racism there. A white boy spit on me off the bus. And my grandma was in town that particular week, and she put him in his place, so to speak, and I never had any problems from him again, right? But that is another form of advocacy, right? Your family can also be advocates with and for you, to support you, to affirm you, to protect you, right?
We count on it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, in this time where now trans issues have risen to public view in a way they never previously had. I observed in the last year myself, somebody who has considered myself trans-friendly for a long, long time, thanks to a couple brave people in my lifetime early on. I feel like I'm observing more comfort for trans people to be out. Do you think that's something that I'm making up?
I don't necessarily think you're making it up, but I think it's complicated. I went to a talk last night with Janet Mock, and she was talking about this as well. But there's a complication that comes, like with heightened visibility, comes sort of heightened scrutiny and attacks on that visibility. So I think that there is a lot more visibility. There are a lot more folks who are sort of disclosing and naming themselves and putting themselves in sort of a public view,
which isn't totally brave.
I mean, it is courageous to sort of counter what society says you should be and how you should be, and there's still some discomfort. There's still some uneasiness. Like even for myself, right? I'm a pretty open, outspoken trans person, but I still get uncomfortable or nervous or unsure when I need to disclose this to other folks, when I need to name myself, because I don't know how folks are going to react. And even folks who sort of claim to be or are allies or trans friendly, there's still some gaps in knowledge, some gaps in awareness, some gaps in language that come up and still feel a little like attacks, even though they're not intended to be, right?
This is so good that you're saying this on the radio show.
Well, I'm not sure how I approach this, but it just seems to me that the gay movement, or the gay, people being gay, and I'm the father of 2 gay kids. I have a lot of kids. It was all of a sudden, it became, just a lot more gay people than we ever thought. And I even looked yesterday, I had sent out a thing from a photo service that had a story about sharecroppers back in 1939 in Missouri doing a demonstration on the side of the road. And on that same site, I found pictures of men together from like 1900, and it was just like shot after shot of apparently gay guys all dressed up getting their picture taken. And so we learned everyone, turns out, why did the gay thing advance more quickly than, say, civil rights in some ways? Because a lot of people have gay people in their family, whereas not everyone has a person of color in their family. And then rapidly, all of a sudden, the LBGT and the transgender movement, all these things are on the scene, and they're, apparently a lot more people are LBGT than I had ever imagined. And I just wonder, was everyone in the closet? Was everyone having to hide this? In my high school of 800 kids, maybe there was one kid I thought was probably gay. Sure, there must have been many.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I'm just, it seems like
What's the
everything's,
question?
I don't know, it's just sort of opening up.
Well,
And we're having to handle it and learn a lot about it. It's good, it's a challenge, but a lot of people didn't feel good about it and maybe went in the Trump direction. I just think there might have been a reaction, not saying people should hold back, but I think that those things are interconnected.
Yeah, what I hear you talking about is coming out and disclosure, right? I think we make an assumption about who we think is in our lives, who we think we know because they haven't disclosed to us, right? So just because someone hasn't told you that they're trans doesn't mean that they aren't. Just because someone hasn't told you that they're gay doesn't mean that they aren't, right?
No more assumptions.
Right, exactly. And I think that's one of the things that we sort of need to move beyond, because what we're then saying is that the expectation is that you disclose, right? And not everyone wants to,
right.
is safe to, right? And so we can't just assume because someone hasn't said it that it means that they aren't. We have to sort of allow people to share what they want, when they want, if they want, and not push that.
We want to thank you for coming on the show, Dr. Simmons.
Yeah.
It's been very enlightening.
Thank you for having me.
I'm really happy to have met you. I look forward to seeing you again.
Yeah.
And I want to thank Morgan Lonergan, who is our intern, for really getting it going for us.